Now, the majority of videos on this channel is me doing tutorials on certain handstand and calisthenics skills. And when we do tutorials or programs, we are nearly always going to give you the best things that you should be doing, or the ideal situation you should do all these steps, the sets, the reps, the correct progressions to achieve the skill in the best manner. And from a teaching point of view, that's probably the best way to go about it. But today I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm just going to show you what I'm doing in my training to work towards a better quality stool to press and handstand push-up progression. So this is going to be the reality of my training. I haven't done any warm-up. I'm going to show you the exercises that I use to get into the best possible positions that I can today, working towards those two skills. Now I can do those movements. I can do handstand push-ups and I can do stool to presses. My handstand push-up is pretty strong, but my stool to press is ugly and really needs some polish. So let's first look at what I'm dealing with in terms of flexibility and mobility cold. So I've literally just walked out, I've vacuumed the floor, I've got the car out of the garage and I've got Rosie on a bed. That's it. I've been sitting down all day. So I've been doing critiques. I've been on my computer, sitting at a desk in a chair for about 4 hours today. So flexibility is not going to be at its best. But we're dealing with this. I can get nose to the floor and that's pulling my hamstrings. Now obviously that straddle seated position or straddle pancake is really important for the stool to press because we want to start in that straddle L position. We need to have a decent forward fold. So this shouldn't be too bad for me. So that's definitely usable. So when we're looking at forward fold, have a look from the side. Make sure you're not only looking at the legs, so locking the knees backwards, even hyperextend them into that position, but we're also looking at what the spine's doing. We don't want to be in this position. So see how my legs are straight, but my spine is going that direction. Ideally, we want to get the hips out the way and lay the torso down as long as it can, or lengthen the spine as long as it can into that position. And the torso should ideally be coming back towards the legs, with the head coming down towards the floor. And that's going to make it much easier for you to get your hip crease on top of your hands for the press handstand. But in terms of flexibility, what I need today to do the stool to press, I need to definitely open up that pancake position. We also just need to give the wrists and hands a little bit of a warm up. So I'm just going to spread the fingers, I'm just going to do a few circles, and I'll just go straight into some peels. I don't actually do that much to warm up my hands and wrists because they're so used to doing handstands every day. So that will probably be enough, and then I'll just do a couple of handstands and see how that feels. Now obviously if you're doing your warm up and you can't do a freestand handstand yet, you could just jump up onto the wall, you could go into a crow position, top of a push-up, anything where you're starting to load weight into your hands, and check how that feels. So it is really important to do that daily check-in or that check-in before you do your session to see what you're dealing with. Our bodies change on a daily basis. All depends on all the stresses, on our nutrition, how much sleep we've got, what food we've eaten, what postural positions we've been in, and everything in between. So you need to just get a little bit of a check-in. So like I say, my hips are tight, so I'm going to go into a straddle position. I'm going to take the hips backwards and do a few good mornings there. I'm going to also open the hips up with some Cossacks. So with the Cossack, I'm trying to keep my feet flat on the floor. I'm trying to keep my torso as upright as possible. And then slowly increasing the range in the adductors as I come down sideways there. So adductors in this position and then sitting into the hip as much as I can there. Same thing on the other side. Now this just really flosses and opens the hips up really nicely. And just by doing that, now notice when I come down into my straddle position, that's already much better. And that's probably enough actually to get my stool done. Now remember, I'm pretty flexible in these positions, so I'm just opening up what I have available. I'm not going to new ranges. But you want to do the same thing when you do your training. You want to open up what you have available each session. Now it might be a little bit less or a little bit more than the session before, but month to month, obviously the goal is to try and get deeper and deeper and progress further and further down the progression line. Okay, then I'm just going to pick a easier progression of the press handstand. Let's move the camera so you can see me. And I'm just going to use a partial range handstand push-up. So because I'm going to try and press from a straddle position on the floor, or a seated straddle position, this standing press is a lot smaller range of motion and should be pretty comfortable for me. I'm going to go through straddle because the stool to press passes through the straddle position. So here, and then I'm just going to do a partial range handstand push-up and just start to warm that up a little bit. So I'm warming up the elbows, the shoulders, that pathway of the handstand push-up, just with some easy repetitions for me. Now, if you don't have strong handstand push-ups, easy might be push-ups, just standard ones, dips, or pike push-ups, something like that. Okay, so now we know that we've got partial range handstand push-ups. They feel okay, shoulders are warmed up, elbows are warmed up. The handstand position, balance-wise, feels good. And I can do that standard straddle press to handstand. So what I'm gonna do now is go through a full range of motion, eccentric, see what I'm dealing with from a stool to press point of view. My biggest issue with these is my feet drag on the floor. So let's see how it goes. So I'm just gonna kick up, come through the straddle, come down, try and get through as best I can without touching the floor. Toes touch, but I made it through to the straddle L and then come back out. Little rest at the bottom, open those hips up again a bit more. And you can see there already, that's much deeper than it was before. Look, I can get belly, chest, chin to the floor. So even though I haven't done that many repetitions, it's warmed up quite nicely. I got through, but my feet did drag. But even when I'm fully warmed up, my toes still drag. And if that happens, I've got a couple of choices. Obviously, I could keep working on it, try and work on some hip flexor compression or hip flexor strength to be able to lift the feet up higher. I could work on mobility. So I need to try and improve those things. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use a handstand board, which is just going to give me a little bit more clearance. I need to give it a dust first. And then this time I'm going to use the board for clearance. I'm going to see if I can get a full range handstand push-up, so touch the head to the floor. It's actually going to be a slight deficit because I'm going to go below the hands by the thickness of the board. Got to turn the hat round. And then I'll do the eccentric stooler, but try not to touch the floor. Now the only downside here with the board is now my hands are too narrow. This board is fantastic for one-arm handstand work, but when I'm doing presses and planches, I like to have my hands a little bit wider, and now look, my pinkies have come off the side. So let's change that slightly and pick weight plates instead. Now these aren't quite so good from a surface point of view because we've got that divot, but if I position my hands correctly, that should be fine. Now I can go a little bit wider, I can turn them out where they're happy. I can kick up, show control, come down through that handstand push-up, touch. Shoulders didn't like that, they're not warmed up enough for that deficit position. So if the shoulders feel a bit unhappy when I do that, I'll just bang out some easier push-up variations or actually some dips to get in nice and deep in that position. First toe assist. So lots of blood, lots of floss of the elbow and the shoulder. Okay, that feels better. See if it helps. Just adjust the camera, make sure my toes are in. I'm also going at real time. Apart from some little edits when I mess up words and things, I'm not actually taking anything away. So you're seeing exactly what I'm doing to make my body happy to do this movement. So let's now see. And didn't like that one. Let's now see if I can come down to there. Yep, much happier this time. And then can we come down all the way through and not touch the floor? We can. Okay, so we've got our slight deficit handstand push-up and we've got our full range eccentric stool to press. So now we can start to work the concentric stool to press. Put the full range handstand push up in at the top before coming back down for an eccentric stooler. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try one. Just step into my position. So you wanna make sure when you get into that straddle L-sit position that you go into a position that you're comfortable with. And if I try and push up off the floor into a straddle L-sit hold, it's gonna be quite a sunken position. I'm probably not gonna be able to get out of that position at the moment. So instead I'm gonna step into the straddle L-sit position, which will give me a little bit more height, which should allow me to push up from that to handstand. So I'm going to go in from this position instead of sitting on the floor into my straddle L, then up. Yep, so there's the stooler. Then see if I can get the handstand push up, touch the floor, come back up, and now do the eccentric. Still kissing the floor just a little bit, but we count that as a repetition. So real time, that's taken 15 minutes, including the warm up and those drills, those exercises to get the mobility there, to make the concentric stool to press up to handstand, the full range handstand push up, and then go back down to the straddle L-sit position. Okay, so let's see now, if I move the plates out of the way, just need to make sure my hip is up and over. So this is another good tip for your straddle good morning position, or your seated straddle this position. If your butt is tucked under like this, notice I can't get my head down My spine is really rounded, my low back is pointing in that direction. If I grab hold of my butt cheeks and move them out of the way, really try and get onto my sit bones on both sides, now I can get over much more into that position. And what that means is I can get my palms to the floor. So hopefully now I will be able to push out of this position up to handstand. Hands went slightly in the, or slightly out of position, so I just took them a little bit wider. And now see if I can come down. A little bit of touching, but made it back down. So that's the full rep that me and Rosie were after today. But let me know down in the comments if you have any questions regarding my training. Let me know if you have any questions about your training. Thumbs up and subscribe would be appreciated. If you're after coaching, check out my website or my app, and I'll speak to you in the next one.